Marvel has had decades to figure out animation, decades of chances, dozens of series, hundreds of episodes, and after all of that, a revival of a 30-year-old cartoon is the one that finally got it right. That should tell you something. Not a fresh IP, not a prestige original, a continuation, a follow-up to a show that aired on Saturday mornings in the 90s, aimed at kids who just wanted to see Wolverine pop his claws. And somehow, that continuation became the most emotionally sophisticated piece of Marvel animation ever produced. That's not a small thing to claim. So let's actually earn it. Marvel's animated history is genuinely impressive in places. The 90s Spider-Man series was a cultural touchstone. Spectacular Spider-Man had writing sharp enough to make grown adults argue about it online 15 years later. The 90s X-Men series itself was formative for an entire generation, introducing millions of people to themes of prejudice and identity through Saturday morning cartoons. That show mattered. It still matters. But mattering and excelling are two different things. Most Marvel animation, even the beloved stuff, carried the fingerprints of its constraints. Rushed production, network interference, stories that pulled their punches at the last moment, characters simplified to make merchandising easier. You felt the ceiling even when the show was doing something good. X-Men '97 feels like the ceiling was removed entirely. What's immediately striking is the confidence. This show knows exactly what it is, and it never apologizes for it. It doesn't try to modernize the X-Men by stripping away what made them mythic. It doesn't sand down the edges to appeal to the widest possible audience. It trusts the material, and more importantly, it trusts the audience. That trust shows up everywhere. In the pacing, which lets scenes breathe and lets conflict develop without rushing toward resolution. In the dialogue, which treats characters as intelligent people with complicated interiority rather than vessels for exposition. In the emotional beats, which are earned slowly across episodes rather than dropped in for quick impact. Most animated series, Marvel or otherwise, tell you how to feel. X-Men '97 creates the conditions where you can't help but feel it. But that's not even the strongest part. The character writing here is operating at a level that most live-action superhero content doesn't reach. These are characters who have been around for decades, with histories so tangled and contradictory that writers usually just pick the version they like and flatten everything else. X-Men '97 doesn't do that. It holds the contradictions in place and lets the tension between them become the story. Cyclops is a perfect example. He has always been a polarizing character. Too rigid, too earnest, too much the straight man in a cast full of more charismatic personalities. This show reframes all of that. His rigidity becomes conviction. His earnestness becomes something genuinely moving. For possibly the first time in any adaptation, you understand exactly why people follow him and exactly why he exhausts them. Rogue carries decades of complicated history with her powers and her relationships, and the show engages with all of it without simplifying any of it. Magneto, in whatever role the season places him, is written with the kind of moral weight that the character demands, neither purely villain nor comfortable hero, but something harder and more true. Every character has an interior life. Every character wants something that conflicts with what someone else wants. That's just good writing. It sounds simple. It isn't. And this is where it becomes undeniable. The themes in X-Men '97 are not incidental. They are structural. The show is about prejudice. Not as a backdrop, not as a metaphor. You can safely ignore if you want to focus on the fights, but as the actual engine of every conflict. The X-Men exist in a world that has decided they are dangerous because of what they are. Not what they've done. What they are. That premise is not new to the X-Men, but X-Men '97 treats it with a seriousness and a consistency that the franchise rarely sustains. The emotional cost of living under that kind of hostility accumulates across episodes. Characters carry trauma. They make decisions shaped by wounds that haven't healed. The show doesn't pretend that doing the right thing makes you safe, or that goodwill changes minds quickly, or that hope is cheap. For a show based on a Saturday morning cartoon, that's a remarkable thing to do. For any superhero show, period, it's rare. The identity themes land with similar weight. Questions of belonging, of chosen family, of what it means to fight for people who fear you. These aren't decorative. They're structural. They explain why the X-Men keep going even when going seems irrational. And they give the action sequences actual stakes because you understand what the characters are fighting to protect and what they're afraid of losing. The animation deserves its own moment here. The show makes a specific and deliberate choice to honor the visual language of the original series while elevating it through modern technique and direction. It's not trying to look like a 2024 show. It's trying to look like the best possible version of what that 90s show was reaching toward. That's a more interesting, creative decision than simply modernizing the aesthetic would have been. It creates a sense of continuity, visual and emotional, that grounds the new material in something familiar without becoming nostalgic in a lazy way. The action choreography is genuinely impressive. The compositions are considered. There are individual shots in this series that are constructed with the deliberateness of something you'd see in theatrical animation. What truly separates it isn't nostalgia. Nostalgia would have been enough to get people to watch the first episode. It is not enough to make a show worth defending, worth returning to, worth recommending to someone who has no attachment to the original. X-Men 97 earns that recommendation for people who weren't alive in 1992 because the craft holds up independent of sentiment. New viewers find a show with a confident visual identity, genuinely complex characters, and thematic ambitions that most adult dramas don't bother with. They don't need to know the original to feel the weight of what's happening. The show contextualizes itself. It creates its own stakes. It earns its own emotional resonance. That is the mark of writing that actually works, as opposed to writing that works only for people already invested. And here is where we have to be direct. Marvel Animation has produced good work. It has produced work that was important and work that was loved, but it has rarely produced work that took risks at the level of craft and emotional honesty that X-Men 97 operates on. The show makes choices that could have failed. It goes to places that are genuinely uncomfortable. It doesn't walk back its emotional commitments when they become difficult. It treats the audience as people who can handle complexity, who want to feel something real, who don't need every wound to be healed by the final credits. That's what makes it the best Marvel animated series ever made. Not the nostalgia, not the animation, not even the characters. It's the refusal to be less than what it could be. It's the decision, visible in every episode, to take the material seriously and follow it wherever it honestly goes. That kind of artistic courage doesn't come from a franchise. It comes from people who believe this story was worth telling as truthfully as they could tell it. And the result is something Marvel Animation has never quite managed before. A series that doesn't just entertain you, but stays with you and makes you think about what it means to fight for a world that hasn't decided to deserve you yet.